Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Barrett Louie. I'm part of the marketing team here at RiskIQ. Today, we'll be exploring methodologies for threat analysis, walk through use cases, and work through hands-on exercises. Before we get started, there are a couple housekeeping notes. First, today's workshop is being recorded. Second, today's session will be interactive. Throughout the workshop, we'll be unmuting lines for questions and conversation. If you have a question while your line is muted, please send them through the GoToWebinar questions panel. The team will answer as many as we can as we go. Now, let me introduce you to the team that's here to support you today. First, Benjamin Powell. Benjamin is RiskIQ's Director of Technical Marketing and will be leading today's workshop. In addition, we also have a couple folks here to help answer any questions. Ryan Salerno, who is a Solutions Architect, and Jacqueline Witter, who is our Senior Events Marketing Manager. And with that, I'll hand it over to Benjamin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today and the team for helping out. Today's workshop is going to be a little bit different. Generally, what we do is we start with something good and find something bad, or something bad and find more bad. But what I wanted to do today was to show you how to use this tool to look at something that's not bad, but to understand the impact to your privacy and what happens with these applications and websites. So what I decided to do for today was to look at the official mobile applications for both Trump and Biden and the official websites for both candidates. And we're going to go through in detail and look at these, and it's interactive. So if you have a question or you don't understand something, please stop me, ask a question, and I will potentially unmute you, ask the question, we'll go through and look. This is interactive. It's not pre-recorded, and I want to make sure that if you have a question and you don't understand something, that I answer it, because there's probably 3 other people that are on the line that have the exact same question. So I'm going to show you some techniques and things that we can do to look at these websites. But these are the official mobile apps and the official websites that we're going to do. I'm going to start off by explaining some of the data sets, and I'm going to ask you some poll questions, because when I present the material, I want to make sure I present it in a way that is your viewpoint, the way that you look at things, as not as how you're voting, but as you do your job, as you work within security. You might be a vuln specialist, you might be a pen tester, you might be a system administrator, you might be in management. So I want to make sure that I give you that perspective of the information, high level or very down to the weeds. So we can go down to the weeds or stay at high level. So we'll kick things off by explaining what we're doing today. So if you notice, every single slide that we're going to be showing today has a promo code on there. And the reason why we have a promo code is that we have basically 3 different levels of accounts within the system. If you create an account in Passive Total and you used a free email account like Yahoo or Gmail, we call that a community level account. So we have embedded you as a security professional, so you don't get all access to all the data, and you're limited in the amount of results, the number of days that you'll see, or the type of data that you'll see. If you sign up using your corporate email account, then we will give you an additional data set, which is services, to find out what services are running on a particular IP address, but also give you 90 days of information in the results. Now, if you're in a trial, the trial lasts for 30 days, and the promo code I'm going to give you today will last for 1 week, but we'll give you enterprise level. We'll give you all of the data, all of the data sets going back to the beginning of time that we've collected over 10 years. So please, if you haven't created a corporate email account with our system and you're using a free account, please take the time to go in and create one and use the promo code. You can kick off the trial, and this will give you more data in the system, okay? Visibility. So when you look at the 3 different types of accounts that we have, if we started off with a single, IP address, and I was using the community free account, then I would only see certain types of data for a certain period of time. So you can see on the far left, it shows you a little bit less. But if I'm using the organizational one, I'll get the services and I'll get some additional history. So I get that expanded. And if I'm using the enterprise account, the paid account, then I see a lot more. I see data sets that can link data together, to chain more information together to give me the full view of what's happening. So if I look at services, I can see the domain that's associated with because of the IP address. I can look at the whois information. I can look at components that are running, open source intelligence, different things that will allow me to see more information and link it together. So inside of RiskIQ, the advanced data sets are the ones that have trial listed up above. The traditional data sets that you're looking for, like whois, passive DNS, SSL search is an advanced data set, but we give it to you because whois data is with GDPR has been redacted. It's obfuscated, so you can't tell a lot of the linkage that would give you in the past. Subdomains, open source intelligence, hashes, services and projects, and the ones that link more things together to give you the full complete picture of the infrastructure chain that you're seeing will be the trackers, the components, the host pairs, and the cookies. And we're going to go through all the different tabs, all the different information, and we're going to use some of the advanced data sets to get a greater understanding of who's for and who's against each candidate, and how these candidates are using their infrastructure to attract voters to their sites. Okay, so remember the community accounts are only 14 days worth of history, and the security professional accounts, the one that uses a corporate email account, you get 90 days of history. Okay. Now, we talked about already the differences between the traditional data sets that you're used to and the advanced data sets. The advanced data sets are possible because we're collecting that data, and I'll go into greater detail about that. But it's really important to understand how those advanced data sets work, because a lot of times your investigation will hit a dead end and you don't know where to go. But with the advanced data sets, you'll be able to see those linkages and understand the full scope of the threat and all the infrastructure involved. Okay. So the promo code that we're going to use, if you're already in a trial, you don't need to use the promo code. The promo code is only going to be good for the next 7 days, starting today. But I'll show you how to put that in so you can use it. Now, if you haven't created an account, you can go to community.riskiq.com/registration and create your account today and use that promo code that's listed there. Now, if you are already a community user and just want to add that promo code for today's workshop, maybe you attended one in the past, then you can add it in inside of your account settings. So if you logged into community.riskiq.com and you go to the upper right-hand corner, you see a little person. If you click on it, under the profile settings, you'll see promo code, and there's a little pencil there. And if you click on it, you can type in that promo code, and the promo code is case sensitive. So on the bottom of the screen, on the left-hand side, you'll see vrthw-election. So if you paste that in to that area or type it in, if you click outside of that, all of a sudden your queries will jump up to like 26,000 queries a day. So we want to try to give you unlimited queries for the week, and that also works for API queries as well. So if you're using something like Maltego, or you have an internal system, let's say Splunk or something that you want to suck that data into, you can use the account to bring that data across. Okay. Now, there are also 3 different areas where you can decide how often you want to get information from RiskIQ. So for example, if you have a project and you're monitoring an IP address and you want to see what new domains appear, that frequency will be decided in this area, in this under the account settings. Also, if you want to see new articles that RiskIQ has published on threat intelligence from strategic, tactical, or operational types of intelligence, you can choose how frequently you want to be sent emails, and if you want to get them at all. So that's where you control that from. So there are several tools that we're going to be using today, and we use RiskIQ tools, but I also use other ones, because as threat investigators, you're probably trying to use all tools at your disposal to try to find out more about these things. So we're going to be using the Google Safe Browsing Check. We're going to use URL Scan.io potentially to go view some sites, and hybrid analysis, where we might have put in the mobile app, or you might tell it to go to the domain and investigate it to see if there's anything wrong with it. So we're going to use all these tools. So I'm going to stop for a quick second, and I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to paste them into the chat. So you'll have them available. So give me a quick second. Going to the chat section, and I'm going to paste this in. So all of these are available, so you can just click on it and immediately get there. And I'm going to do this throughout the workshop to make it easy for you. I'll paste in the URLs that we're going to be using. Okay, give me a second. I'll put it back on the screen. So let me give you some background on myself. So I'm Benjamin Powell, the Director of Technical Marketing here at RiskIQ. I'm a certified ethical hacker. I've worked running security teams and network teams, and then went over and started to help develop security products. So I've worked in state government, international airport, the Port District here in San Diego, education, biotech, financial services, manufacturing, software development. So I have a broad experience defending and implementing security solutions, and also developing them and figuring out what organizations need. And one of my hobbies is I'm into spearfishing, but when I tell that to people in our industry, they don't want to take my emails anymore. But I actually go and swim in the ocean and catch fish. And I caught this fish about 2 months ago off of San Diego, off of La Jolla, 35-inch halibut. And you'll probably see in my background some of my spear guns hanging up on the wall. But remember, if you have questions, stop me and I will answer them in great detail for you. So one thing I want to let you know about is we take the exercises that we use in these threat hunting workshops and we publish them to our website. This website isn't indexed from Google, but if you know the URL, you can get there. Excuse me. So if you go to riskiq.com/threat-hunting-resources, you'll see videos, you'll see documents that talk about like the questions you should be thinking about when you look at a data set, even some of the bookmarks that we use. So I want to give you this information, so if you need to go back and do a refresher or understand like a certain data set, or how do I know if something's good or bad, these are some good examples that you can go through. And remember, everything that we're doing in the system is live. So when we go and look at different websites, generally you don't want to go there directly because you could get infected. Today we're going to be going to the real legitimate domains and applications for the candidates, but there might be other domains listed that if we do want to investigate them, we want to use the tool. So the tool will be the buffer between your machine and the website that we're going to be going and looking at. If you go there directly, you could potentially get infected if it's malicious. So you always want to use some tool to go and do it. And what's nice is that if you're using a tool like RiskIQ, the threat actor doesn't know you're investigating because we've already gathered the data. And now you're looking at that history, that pre-fetched information, and the threat actor never knows what's happening. So if you're doing pen testing, if the minute you start probing the person that you're going to pen test, they know that you might be doing it. But if you can do your research up front and know everything, then you know specifically how you're going to target them and what you're going to do. And if you're looking at something that's malicious or suspicious, you can start gathering and piecing that data together, okay? So Barrett, can we launch the poll questions?
Absolutely. Here we go.
So here's the first poll question. What type of passive total account are you using? The free email, the corporate email, or the paid enterprise account? And the reason why I want to ask is I want to make sure that I'll explain what the differences will be once the trial is over. Okay, great. So the answers are about 18% are on the free account and 82% are using the corporate email. Great, great. And no one has an enterprise account, so great. So I'll explain the benefits of that. Okay. Okay, the next question. What area of the organization you work for? Are you an incident responder, vulnerability management, SOC, threat analyst, or pen tester? Okay, so 25% are incident responders, 42% are threat analysts, 8% are vulnerability management, 17% are SOC, and 8% are pen testers. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, what type of investigation work would you like to see in the future? MageCart, which is skimming, form skimming, phishing, domain infringement, how to take down bad infrastructure. Just want to ask because we try every week, we try to do something new, and I always like to find something that's interesting. So if you give me some hints on what you like to see, I'll try to get some of those. Okay, and okay, 38% wanted information on how to take down bad infrastructure, 15% on MageCart, phishing, 38%. One thing I want to let you know is we've done a whole workshop on domain infringement and takedowns. So if you go to our YouTube channel, RiskIQ.com, you'll find it under our threat hunting workshops. So we have one of those out there if you want to see it today or tomorrow, and then that's one that I'd like to bring back again. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, are you going to vote this year? I want to know because you're going to see some information, and it's very important to get out and vote. So I want to make sure that you're going to do it. I'm going to show you what these candidates are doing to see how you're decided and how they should figure out what you're going to do. Okay. 73% say they're going to vote, 27% no. For those 27, please vote. If you can legally vote, please go out and vote. It's really important. Okay. Okay, quick question. Do you ever read the privacy statements for mobile applications? Yes or no? You should. But if you don't, please put down that you don't. Want to know honestly if you ever look at them. And then we're going to go through, and when we look at these apps, you'll be amazed. Okay, so 46% of you said yes. That's pretty high in my opinion, and 54% no. So generally, I say to be honest, I'll look at them occasionally, but generally I'll say no, I don't do it. But when it pops up and asks for permissions, I generally say no for the permissions once the app starts. I have an iPhone. Okay. Okay, and next question. When your mobile asks you to use your location information, do you say yes or no? Do you say yes, use it all the time, or just when you are active, or not at all? So yes or no. Okay, 13% yes, 87% no. Okay. For me, it depends on what the app is doing. If it's Uber, yes, because I need them to find where I am. Otherwise, it's generally no. Okay, here's a good one that most of you don't think about. So when you use the app and it says, hey, I want to use Bluetooth to find devices that are nearby and to figure out your location sometimes, do you enable it or no? Okay. 33% yes, 67% no. Okay. That no was pretty high. I was shocked to see that.
Benjamin, that concludes the polls for today.
Okay. And then we have the polls when we end. You still have those?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'm going to give you some background on how RiskIQ collects data, because a lot of you are using the free accounts and you might not understand what makes us different than other people out there. The information that we have is different than others because we're not relying on feeds. We're not relying on other people to send us data and then we try to see if we can link it together. We're gathering the data ourselves, and because we do that, we know where it came from, what was happening when we're collecting the data, and we're able to link it together. And everything that we do is a reaction to the threat actors responding to us finding them. So when you think about, like, we go and we scan the entire IP4 space. So we have all, like, the services information. We talk to every IP and domain. We collect all the certificates. We look at the ports. Now, we go from 150 countries and we source from residential, commercial, and mobile IP space, and we imitate every popular browser. And you're thinking, well, why are you doing that? Why is that necessary? Well, we want to act like a real user. So we want to act like the intended victim. So I always tell people, we try to act like your parents on the internet. You know, we click on the free iPhone. We do all those types of stuff because we want to see what happens. And we're acting like a real user, from like a headless browser, going out and interacting with the internet just like a real user would. We might go to a search engine. We might search for something. We might have cookies. We'll keep the state. We'll go to a website. We'll go down and click on a few things, go down a few links, and then another virtual user will come in and maybe get a different part, and then we bring all that information together. And the reason why we do that is we want to gather the information like the user, because when the threat actor tries to attack you, they might want to only attack a certain type of device in a certain country. And it's really important to understand how those things are functioning. And so we bring down the full document object model, and with that we see the links, the dependent requests, the cookies, the headers, all that information we have. And so with that, we're able to build an entire map of the internet, how everything's interconnected, what's being brought in from one website or going out to another one. So you might bring an image from Facebook, you might send out some analytics to Google, for example. So we see all that interaction. We do over 2 billion requests a day. We have terabytes of passive DNS information. So that's the IP address that responded to the domain. And we use our own collection methods, but we also share that with other people, and they share their data with us, because it's like, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? Well, only if you're there to hear it. So we're not everywhere. So that's the only piece of data that we really share with others, because we really want to have that rich information, because a threat actor might put up something bad and then take it down and then put it back up again. And if you weren't there to see it, you might not have gathered the data. So we want to make sure that we understand all those things. So if we look at the infrastructure, if we start off with a single piece of malware, that malware might be associated with a particular IP and a cert associated with that IP, which then can be linked together to a different IP, domains, trackers, and we can build out these layers to understand the full infrastructure chain that's out there. Now, what we've done is we've talked to the community. We have about 100,000 community users now in PassiveTotal, and we asked them. We said, how do you use PassiveTotal? And a lot of people said, well, what I do is when I get into work in the morning, I look at articles, and the article might talk about something bad, and I'll take those indicators that are in the article and I'll go into PassiveTotal and I'll paste them in, and I'll copy them, or I have to type them because it's in an image, and I'll type it in there. I spend about an hour or two going through those articles, and that helps me, because then I can understand the full scope, because when they publish, they might not publish everything, or that infrastructure might have changed since publication. And I want to make sure we're protected. So RiskIQ said, well, that's really cool. So we're going to help you. So what we did was we started a threat intelligence portal. It's part of PassiveTotal, and it's for free. You can go there. And what we've done is we've taken all the open source intelligence articles that are out there, we've taken them and we've gone in and pulled out all the indicators. So you don't have to type them. You can just click on them and see them. So that will save you probably an hour a day instead of having to type. You can just click on these and see that infrastructure. But then we did one thing further. We said, well, if you're going out there and you're checking to see if there's new infrastructure, what's linked, we can do that for you. So if you take off with the small indicators that were given inside of the article, we actually have researchers and threat investigators that go through those same articles and expand them and say, here's everything that we see. And we call those enterprise indicators. So these are all of the expanded things that we've seen, so you don't have to go through and do that legwork. So if you just go look at the enterprise indicators, it would be like if you went and spent an hour or 2 or 3 trying to link this infrastructure together and find out what was happening. So now you can start off a lot further and you can see that full picture of what's happening. And so these are inside of our portal. So when you log in, there's the classic PT and the new PT view. If you're in the new PT view, that is the area where you can go through and start searching for these articles and see them. So that gives you a good understanding of how this infrastructure links together with these infrastructure chains. So when the data comes in from what we've collected from the client-side document object model, the certificates, all that information coming in, what we do is we go out and we see about 250,000 new domain resolutions a day. That means somebody's bought a domain, a new IP address was seen with it, newly observed domain, or the IP address on that domain has changed. We have over 5.5 million new host resolutions we're seeing daily, over 106 billion unique DNS records. We do over 2 billion web requests a day. There's over 300,000 new ports that we observe. And we actually have a ton of mobile apps. We probably have the largest repository of mobile apps in the world. We have over 300 plus mobile app stores and over 34 million active apps that we have sandboxed and understand. It's not inside of Passive Total, it's in another product that we have. But we're gonna look at some of that data today. And if you want me to look up an application, I can. So when we're doing this, if you want me to look up and show you a malicious one, we'll do that today as well. So when that data comes in, it goes into our machine learning, which was configured from our threat researchers and threat intelligence people, talk to the data scientists and say, hey, we want you to pull these pieces out. We have this data set. And that goes into all of our different data sets that we have, like the WHOIS records, passive DNS, certificates, the service open source intelligence, historic data trackers, web components, host pairs. And then we have these derived data sets that might be what's been blacklisted, newly observed domains, things that are bad that people are linking to. That's our accomplice list. Scams, IoT, malware, domain infringement, all these different types of things. So how does that help you? So one thing is we can create new data sets and do them retroactively in time. So if you think of like a SIM in your organization, if you find something bad, you set a rule and you say, from this point forward, if I see anything, alert me. But with our data, we can actually go back in time and say, we saw this piece of data, go back in time and create a new data set completely, like cookies. Cookies came out of an investigation that we did with Turla when we were investigating Russian threat actors that are using satellites. And a single certificate illuminated the entire infrastructure. So we went back and pulled out cookies from over 10 years worth of data and rolled that forward within a day. So what we do is we kind of have like the time machine, like the Back to the Future. And so what happens is we can take a value. So like, let's say that there was a cookie and that cookie had an embedded base 64 encoded value. We can say, okay, I want to go through and I want to pull out these values and I'm going to convert it from a base 64 to regular. So I can take yesterday's data that we had and all the data that we collected from today, we merge it together every day. So when we merge it together, we can actually have those data scientists and stuff go through and say, pull this out. You know, I want you to grab this. And that becomes today's aggregate data that the platform uses. So we can roll forward a new data set every single day if we needed to. Or if there was an issue with how it was formatted, we can go through and roll that change through and fix it. No other companies can do that. And so that's something that's unique to us. So this gives you the information to think about, what could happen, what should happen, what could happen, is it happening now, or did it happen? These are the questions that we could answer with our solution. So this could talk about your security policies, your posture, you're modeling something. If this happened, then what would happen? And then your investigations. And we're going to talk about the investigations today. So when you look at the cyber kill chain, where we're focusing is from the firewall and before, everything outside your organization. Most companies are spending their money on tools where they can control what's happening and they can see exactly everything that's happening. So that's from the firewall in, okay? But with COVID and everyone being remote, you need that information that's on the outside. And we can find things during the discussion of something bad, the planning, if some threat actors planning to do something bad, they might talk about it. When they're doing their recon, they're doing their scanning, looking for vulnerabilities, doing the setup and the weaponization, we can usually find it and stop it. So when we see it, we'll probably see it 1 to 4 days before it's active. So if you can stop it before it's live, you've prevented the exposure, you've prevented the issue. So that's what we try to do. So when you look at like a typical threat actor, they might have talked to other people to say, hey, I want to attack this group, this organization. Do you have any compromised hosts inside there? Let me register a domain that's typo squatted. Nothing illegal with that. But the minute that they park it, we will start monitoring it. But then we see, oh, it's email capable. Oh, it has your logos on there. Oh, it's live. We can stop it when during the domain infringement phase, where it has your logos and things like that. And once we put it on our blacklist, say, hey, this is bad, Google and Microsoft take our blacklist, put it in production within 10 to 15 minutes. So 95% of the world's browsers will get that red, do you really want to proceed? It's bad. And then it takes about 1 to 4 days to actually do the takedown, to notify the registrar and the hosting provider and give the proof to say, hey, it's bad, it's infringing against my organization. Okay. But the other thing that we do is we continue to monitor it. So if it comes back, we're able to quickly do the whack-a-mole and say, no, it's still bad. Here's the new information. Maybe it switched IPs, it switched providers. We can just take that and put it on the blacklist again and take it down. So the cool thing is that we all play on the same battlefield. So everybody emits signals. And what RiskIQ is doing is collecting those signals. And because we have those signals, we're able then to make assertions and link things together so that we can find out all the information, what's happening. And so when you think about like a threat actor, we have a threat actor and we have a targeted user. So the threat actor, let's say that they're in Brazil. When they connect to the internet, there's IP addresses, network blocks, autonomous system numbers, internet service providers. And if they're attacking somebody in Canada, let's say, once they create their phishing email, for example, they're going to know the provider, there'll be a subject, the email body, a language, a date timestamp. It might be an HTML type of email. When they send it, we can see everywhere it went. So when you start looking at that, view the source of the email, you can see where it went through, the transit times, what time of day it was sent, and all the autonomous systems it went through to get to that user. And when the user reads it, there could be, they can get information back to the threat actor, if it's HTML, to like fingerprint the machine, understand the operating system that the person's using, things like that. So there's a lot of signals that are out there. So the signals that we're looking at are the passive DNS, the whois, the certs, everything you see on the screen. And it's from our global proxy network, where we go through and we grab all this data. It's important that we do that because if we're coming from our own infrastructure, then threat actors would just block it and say, I don't want any, I'm going to filter out all the requests from RiskIQ's IP space. So we have to come through mobile, residential, commercial IP space from over 150 different countries, all different operating systems, all different types of machines. So then we act like that intended victim. So what we say is you need about 3 solid analytical leads to make a determination if something's good or bad. Otherwise, it's suspicious. But as we go through and we look at things from today, you're going to see some things that to me are very suspicious, but doesn't mean it's bad, because we're looking at the real legitimate domains, and you're going to see that one of the candidates' websites is using a free certificate authority for some of their domains. And generally when we see that, that's one red flag. So we'll go through and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you can be doing the same things yourselves, collecting this data, doing stuff that RiskIQ is doing on the inside. So we have integrations with Splunk and CrowdStrike and others where you take that inside information and then you can investigate with RiskIQ to get the outside information and then bring it back in to understand the full impact to your organization. So for example, you might get an alert of something bad. You go to RiskIQ, you find out all the infrastructure involved in that threat, and you can take that information back into your internal systems and say, did anybody talk to anything that is related to this entire infrastructure we know about? And you go, oh yeah, and then now you can expand that out and see what else is impacted inside. And up on our YouTube channel, we show, we have stuff with Splunk and CrowdStrike and others where we go through and we show those types of integrations. So with the data sets, so all of the slides that you're going to see today, we're going to give to you. So these slides are very detailed, and I'm not going to go through all the slides, but I'm going to show you a couple just to let you know what's here, and then we're going to jump into the interface and we're going to start going through. So when we look at their data sets, we're going to start off with the traditional data sets that you normally see. Who is passive DNS, certificates, hashes, subdomains, and open source intelligence, okay? We're going to go through and see how and why these relate to analysis in your system. So what I'd like you to do is start off by going to www.passivetotal.org, okay? And I'm going to log in. I'm going to open up a tab. And I will do the same. Okay, and I am going to use the classic PT, okay? So if we start off and you have classic PT on the right, make sure you click on that and your interface should look like this. And we're going to look at www.passivetotal.org. And you're going to hit enter, okay? And I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it into the chat. So if you want, you can just click on it so you don't have to make a typing mistake. And I'll give you a little rundown on the interface because some of you are new to Passive Total and I want to show you how it works, okay? So when you bring up this interface, immediately see information to help you out. So when you're using the enterprise version or you're in a trial, you're going to see this analyst insights here. And so what these are questions that analysts had when they go and look at an IP or domain to say, what's some additional information about that? And I have the CrowdStrike app installed inside of CrowdStrike. So it's actually pulling data from my CrowdStrike instance internally and displaying it in the interface here. So occasionally when I run a query, you might see some black squares underneath here that will be intelligence from CrowdStrike, okay? And then a CrowdStrike tab you'll see here, and this CrowdStrike tab is because I have that installed. You might not have that if you don't have the CrowdStrike app installed inside of the Falcon console, okay? Now, I'm gonna go into my account settings real quick because it's important so you can see this, so you can understand why my screen might look different than yours, okay? So I have some integrations that are turned on. So I have hybrid analysis. So if you went out to hybrid analysis, you can create a free account and get an API key. Then you can come back into this interface and add that API key in here. So when you query something inside of Passive Total, it will in real time send a request to hybrid analysis to gather any data on that thing you search for and bring that data back and display it under the hashes, okay? And the same is true for VirusTotal. So I have emerging threats turned on, but I don't have an emerging threat account. The reason why I have that turned on is it will give me results to a hash. and I can just take that hash and copy it and go to VirusTotal or into Google or search engine and paste it in and see if I get a hit on something. So even though I can't see the detailed information that they have, I might have that turned on. So this is something that I wanted you to see, okay? So if I go back and I look at passivetotal.org, this middle section, this heat map, it's showing 6 months worth of data at any point in time. And the number represents the number of unique IP addresses we've seen on that particular day. And so if I move over, you can see all the different IP addresses that we see. And you'll see that some of the squares have a curve on the bottom, some have a curve on the top. And what that is, the end of the month or the beginning of the month. The end of the month will have a curve on the bottom. The beginning of the month will have a curve on the top, okay? And there's a legend over here. So if a square is gray, it will say, hey, it's non-routable. If you're not in a trial and you have a free account, you might see some that have gray with a star in it, means it's masked. You can only see 14 days or 90 days. If it's blue, it's routable. If it's gray, it's non-routable. And you're thinking non-routable on the IP on the internet, that's not possible. Well, what happens is when we go and talk to the name server, we pull in every single thing from that name server. Every record, whether it's routable or non-routable, and we bring that data in. So a threat actor might have a domain and it's in a name server, but it's to a 127.0.0.1 address, a loopback address. So it's not routable, but it's in the system, and then they can change the IP and make it active for a little bit, and then they change it back. So you might see green, which shows that something was active, as routable and non-routable on the same day. So that's what that is. And if you see something with a orange mark in the corner, that means something changed on that date. So I'm just going to come over and I'm going to select another area of time. And when I select that, you'll see here, hey, there was an IP address change here, okay? And you see here another IP address was seen, or first seen. So you can see very quickly visually if something changed. The other thing I want to show you is with insecurity, we're the last to know generally. Unless we see the attack happening or our system catches it, if someone comes to us and tells us they have a problem, it was from a couple days ago probably. And then they'll say, hey, last Thursday there was a problem, and our first response is, next time you have a problem, let me know right away. Don't wait. But what happens is within the system, I can come in and I can select one day by clicking once, okay? Or I can hold the shift key down and click on another area. And when I do that, it will filter to just show me those results, that specific period of time. And down here, this data bar is showing the entire history. So if we look here, this is going back to 2014. Okay, we have data going back to 2014 on this domain, passivetotal.org. And if I want to reset it, the easiest way is I just go to the far right, I click, and it resets it, or I just hit the refresh up above, and it refreshes the data, and I see everything, okay? So on the left-hand side, you'll see filters. There's a checkbox or an X. The checkbox means show me that type of thing, and the X means don't show me this type of data. So for example, if I only want to see things from DigitalOcean, I can click on this checkbox and then click on the X for the other ones, and I can filter those out to show just those things. And if I click on it again, it turns it off, okay? So if I click on the same thing I clicked on previously, it removes the filter. So if I clicked on the check, if I go back and click on it again, then it removes that filter. If I scroll down to the very bottom, I'm going to give you a history lesson on passivetotal.org. So PassiveTotal was a product that Brandon Dixon and Steve Ginty, both employees of RiskIQ now, had created on their own. So when they would do an investigation, it would take them a week or two to gather all the data, link it together, and get it ready, and then they began their investigation. So they thought, hey, if I can gather all this data and have it ready, then if there's an investigation, I can just start right away. I don't have to gather the data first. So that's how it started. So if we take a look, and if I hover over these ASNs, I'm going to change this view to be 500 so I can see the entire list. So if I go to the very bottom, you'll see it's DigitalOcean. And I can see that the 3 different companies that saw this IP address at that time, Mnemonic, Kaspersky, and AlienVault, okay? And as I look in different time periods, I can see it's still at DigitalOcean, and we have tags that say where it is. So DigitalOcean, it's routable. And then right around January 14th, 2016, this is when RiskIQ acquired PassiveTotal and brought it in. They were using data from us and others, but PassiveTotal was purchased and became part of our platform. And you can see the date that that happened. And you can see, hey, RiskIQ was monitoring it from that point forward. And so that gives you some history of what's happened. You can also see the geolocation. So it's all been in the US, okay, during that period of time. And we always give you the first and last seen. So the reason why we do that is something like if there is a version of a component that's running, maybe Apache, you can look to see when was the first time we saw it and what version was running, and then a new version took over, and when did that take effect? So you can say, like if somebody was compromised, you can say they were fixed it on this date because the new version of the code that's no longer vulnerable was installed, for example. So you be able to see that type of data in there. Sorry about that. I didn't mute my phone. I apologize. There we go. Okay. Now I'm muted. Sorry about that. Rookie mistake, and I should have known better. There's some questions you should be thinking about when you're looking at passive DNS. And so I have a slide for this. So when you look at this, it's really good to understand when this was registered. When was the last time it was actively resolving? What IP addresses? Is it a dynamic IP address? Is it a dynamic DNS? Is the domain tagged as being compromised? Is it routable? Is it non-routable? Is it part of a larger allocation of IP address? Is it sinkhold? So these are all things that you should be thinking about. And so I put these slides together, and there's one for every data set. So if we don't show the slide, you're going to get these, so you can have these things in mind. And these are the types of questions that data set could help you in your investigation. Okay. So if we look now at DNS records, so within the DNS records that we see, we're going to see the mail exchange, the name server, the start of authority, the canonical names, and the text entries. Now, what's good about this is that what we saw over time was if we determined that a specific IP address was associated with something bad, when we saw a new domain associated with that, we would say, hey, it's suspicious. IP addresses are only considered suspicious, but a domain could be labeled as malicious all the time. And we would take that information and we would understand a little bit faster what's happened. So the threat actors got smart, and they said, well, if I'm going to give out an allocation of IP addresses for my infrastructure, I'm only going to use a small amount for this attack. And I'm never going to use those again. So you can't link it and say, oh, that's referring to a known bad previously. And so when we found that happening, we made all of the DNS records available to the public. We used to be only A records. So the resolutions are the A records. So we now have all these other types. So if we look at the mail exchange, this is the mail server that's responsible for that domain. If we look at the NS records, so those are the name servers, the ones that we go in and we pull that data out to find out every single domain and IP address, whether it's routable or non-routable, associated with that name server. The text records, so these are used to help with DMARC and with send policies for your mail. These are the ones that show that you're legitimate or how you interact with email systems and things like that. The start of authority, like what is the domain that starts off this particular organization? So XYZ company might be the .com might be the start of authority for this domain. Okay. The canonical name. So these would be the, if you had example.com, www might be a canonical name for example.com. So this shows you all those types of things that might be out there that go back and refer back to that a different domain, okay? And then the subdomains. And one thing that I want to mention about subdomains is that the infrastructure that you find in the subdomains might be completely different infrastructure associated with that subdomain. So a threat actor, for example, could create a real subdomain under that person's account and have other infrastructure that's linked off of it. So that's why you always want to keep track of any entry that was made to your registrar to say any DNS entries, anything that is occurring. You want to be able to spot check those and make sure that those are fine. So what we'll do now is I'm going to go back in and let's look at those DNS records for pathoftotal.org. So I have MX records. So I have 5 different mail servers, and you can see that we're using Google. I can look at the start of authority, Amazon. We're using Amazon. We have a canonical name. So we're on the www, but we see that pathoftotal.org is a CNAME for that. Okay. So this gives you a good rundown of those types of things. And if we look at the subdomains, we're going to be doing this with the candidates' websites, and we're going to get a lot of information just by looking at the subdomains on one of the candidates. So these are all the different ones that are associated with this domain. So you'll see there's one API VIP, APP, app.pathoftotal.org, certs, N1, Overwatch. There's a whole bunch of them here. But when you're doing an investigation, you might want to open these up and see what's happening. There's 2 different ways that you can pivot or search on these domains. And I prefer to open up a new tab. Other people like to just click, and I'll show you the differences and the pros and cons with both, and then you can decide. So one way is if I click on something, you'll see I get a breadcrumb up here, and it shows me this path, and I can see it, and it shows where I went to. And if I go back and I click on the previous one, it takes me back, but it still has that breadcrumb, okay? Or I can come back into a subdomain and say right-click and open in a new tab, okay? And I prefer this method. And the reason for that is in threat investigations, you might start off, let's say like an analogy of a tree. You're at the trunk, and I'm going down a branch of the tree, but then I get to a certain point where it ends. And now I want to go back and further my investigation. So I have to go back to the trunk and then go back down, but I don't want to lose what I had. So by opening up the tabs, it gives me the capability that I can come in here and say bookmark inside of Chrome, for example, bookmark all the tabs. And I can take all the tabs and put them into a folder. So then I can go back and open them all up, and it preserves where I was. So for example, every time I click on one of these tabs, you'll notice that it changes. So this is on subdomains. If I go back to resolutions, it'll say resolutions. So it knows where you were. So I can preserve that entire investigation. Okay. So that's the way that I like to prefer to go through these types of queries that we'll be doing. Okay. So if we take a look at the WHOIS records, if you're using one of the free accounts, either free email or corporate email, we show you the last record. We don't give you the history, okay? We have over 10 years worth of history. So we can go back in time and see when Brandon and Steve registered, they had privacy protection. But as we go through and we look at the different time periods, you'll start to notice that here it says RiskIQ, and as I go further, you might even see like real names of people. So Elias is our CEO, founder, so you can see he's listed our address to our building where we're located in San Francisco. So you can see that there's some rich history that's in here, okay? So when you think about like GDPR, well, before GDPR, we would use the WHOIS information to link those IPs to domains together and who they are, and then pivoting off of the people, or telephone numbers to find links of associations. But GDPR came around. This is the general data privacy regulation in the EU. And what that did was it made it that if you're giving out personal identifiable information, which could be contained inside of the WHOIS record, you need to comply, or you could have to pay 4% of your global revenue or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. So all these registrars started to redact the information that's in there. So after GDPR, pivoting off of the email or the phone number in a lot of cases broke those correlations that you used to have. So what we did was we came up and made certificates available. So inside of the certificates, it gives us the ability to do those linkages that we once had. So for example, I might have a SHA-1 associated with it, a serial number, there might be a common name, an alternative name, a street address inside of the certificate, and if I search on it, that can link things together like WHOIS used to do, okay? So that's why we give that to you, okay? So that's why it's an advanced data set, but we make it available to the entire community because it's so valuable, okay? To give you that linkage, okay? So if we come back in and we look at, in this particular one, we don't have any certificates, but we'll look at in a minute when we get into that and we'll see some certificates so you can see that. So let me go back to this tab and we have certificates here, okay? So if I expand this out, you can see the common name that's associated with it, where it's located, the IP addresses. And as we go through, you can see that, hey, is it a paid certificate or is it free certificate authority? So this gives you some good information about that, okay? So if we come back up, the trackers. So these are the little bits of codes. This is one of the advanced data sets. So I'm going to go through and show this because I want to jump right into the meat and potatoes for today. So the trackers could be like the little bits of code that track user experience. So this is like the Google Analytics code, the Twitter ID, Facebook pixel tracking, all those types of things. And if I came over and I search for this and I open this up in another tab, you'll see every other domain in the world that is using that same tracker. So if you look at your own stuff, you can sometimes find bad people because they might have duplicated your website. When they duplicate your website, they generally duplicate your trackers and your cookies. And by pivoting off of those, you can usually find some of those things. So I wanted you to be able to see that, okay? And then if we come in and we look at the components, these are the things that are running on the website that help the website run. And we even get down to the versions that are here. And this is all done from no agents installed. We're going out and crawling this and gathering this data. And we know when it was first seen and when it was last seen. So we know when it started and when it ended. So if you swap versions, we know when that occurred. If you're a threat actor, you might only have 2 or 3 things running under components. If you're a legitimate organization, you can have hundreds or thousands of things. So this could be an area that when you look at it, could show you that, oh, it's suspicious. There's only 3 things running. Threat actors don't stand up stuff they don't have to do, okay? They're very frugal with what they do, okay? If we take a look at host pairs, when we look at the document object model, we're looking at the links, the redirects, the resources that are coming in and going out from every domain and IP address in the world. So if we look here, if I went to www.pathtotal.org, it's redirecting to community.riskiq.com, okay? Does it automatically, and we can say, hey, it started on 2017 and it's happening today. So we know the direction of what things are happening. You know, like the parent, you're going here, and then it's being redirected to this child. Okay, so that's the movement. Okay, and I can either filter one way or another, and we're going to look at that in a minute. Okay, the open source intelligence are all the articles that have been published talking about what we're looking at, and this is like a paid Google search. So these are our articles and others that are out there in the world that if you're searching for something up here, was related to in some sort of security publication, okay? And we can see where it was tagged from, you know, Crunchbase, the different organizations, and how it was found was with a search engine, okay? The hashes are all of those things that we talked about, and I have hybrid analysis listed here because I've installed the API key inside of the profile. So when I search for something, it goes out to hybrid analysis and says, do you have anything on passivetotal.org? Oh yeah, and it gives me that data back, okay? We know about the DNS records already, and then we have projects. So the way that a project works is that, let's say, I can come in here and I can have this little folder here or up here. And when I click on something, I can create a project. And when I create the project, come on, I'll create it from here. Okay, new project. Okay, there are different visibilities of project. Community means every single person in the world that has a community account, free or corporate, can see it. So if you're doing an investigation, don't make it public unless you're done with it and you want to publicize. A team project is everyone in your organization can see it. So if they're part of your organization, they can view the project. And an analyst project is a private project that no one can see except yourself. Okay, so if you're investigating somebody internally and you're going through and gathering data and you don't want them to see it, you can make it an analyst project, and you can change it at any time. Now, the other thing that you can do is under collaborators, I can add anybody's email, whether they're part of my organization or not. And those people with their community account or their enterprise account would be able to see that project. Okay, so when they look under their projects, they'll see it, or if they search on something that was in the project, they'll see a link to that project. Okay, and you can add tags. So if you're, you can tag the data as it comes in automatically to say, when I add it to the project, add these tags associated with it. Okay, and then the CrowdStrike tab that I mentioned earlier shows when an internal system might have reached out to something, and then the services are what services that we saw running over the last 14 days. Okay, and hopefully within the next few months, we're going to open this up to be all of the services we saw going back to the beginning of time, and you can just filter the dates to see what services was available on which date. Okay, so now that's the interface. We've gone through everything. So what I want us to do is we're going to go and start looking at the use cases. So here we go. So election 2020, we're going to look at the official mobile apps and websites for both candidates. So inside of RiskIQ, our platform, we go out, and this is a printout from just yesterday. So there's over 263 different stores we're actively going and pulling data from. We have 51 million mobile apps in our database. There's over 130 active stores right now, 8 different platforms. So when you think of platforms, you're going Google, Apple, Symbian, there's Linux, and some other ones. So there's 8 different platforms, and there's over 12 different languages. So you have official app stores, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. We have Google and you have Apple, for example, that are official. Affiliate ones, what they do is they don't offer the direct downloads to the files. They link back up to the official app stores. That might be something like if you had a Sony phone and they had a store, they might not store the actual things there. They might link back to the real store. A hybrid store means that they might have some links. They might have some things that they're storing as well. And the secondary stores offer direct downloads. So this might be free APKs, for example. And so a lot of those hybrid and secondary stores might have some compromised apps in there. Now, one thing I want to tell you is some ingenious little kid would take free apps, put it on these stores, and charge $1 for them and say, oh, new improved, and make money off of free apps. We found one time. That was thinking, well, that's very smart. But what we're going to look at today are the official apps for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And we're going to go through and we're going to use the tools that you would have access to, and then I'm going to show you from our back end what we see. Okay. Are the official mobile apps bad? Well, it depends how the campaigns use the data that they collect in these applications and websites. What you're going to see is one of the candidates has a lot of collection on the mobile, and the other one has a lot of collection on the website. And the apps all link to the website. So they're kind of doing the same thing, but from two different perspectives. And one is more obvious than the other, and we'll see during our analysis. So when we go through, we're going to need to determine if the mobile app is good or bad. What permissions does it require to run? What's the privacy policy? And how does it use the resources on my phone? Both of them make it impossible to turn off once you get them installed. They're going to run all the time. And do they link to any malicious domains or suspicious domains or apps inside? So we're going to start off with Mike Pence and Donald Trump. And we're going to look at that official mobile app store. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to paste it into the chat, and then I'm going to bring it up. Okay, so if I do this, you can see it now. So we're going to look at the Google Play Store. Apple, you have to have an Apple device, and you have to see it from the device itself to look at the App Store. You can't view the App Store from a browser. So it's very similar type of information that you can see, but the Google Play Store gives you more of the information about the exact permissions that are being used. So by looking at this official app of Donald Trump, you see the reviews, you see the information, and you can install it. So like if you had an Android phone, this is where you would set it up to install to your device, okay? Now, let's take a look at the permissions. So when we look at the permissions, this is what it's saying from the actual application. So this is from what they published to say, hey, when you run this app, this is what we're going to look for. Device ID and call information. Read the phone status and identity, so they know your telephone number, for example, and the type of device that you're using. And you're thinking, well, okay, that's no big deal. But if I know your phone number, I can use that phone number in other places, other devices. I can go to Google or I can go to Facebook and say, what account is associated with that telephone number? I can link that together, okay? They're doing location information. So precise GPS and network-based. So the network-based would be off of Wi-Fi. So there's a database of all of the different routers around the world that if I know your IP address, I can go and do a lookup and say, well, what's my IP for this thing? And it will say, oh, you're located in San Diego, or you're in New York, or you're in Texas, and give you a general location of where you are. So I can either get a network-based type thing based off your IP, or GPS, like my actual coordinates for that. In some applications, because they might say, hey, to come to our rally, we'll give you directions. We'll link to say where you are to where you need to go, and we can give you directions. So some can be used for good, they can be used for bad, but we're going to go through and we're going to talk about this. They can read your phone status, okay? They can find accounts on your system. So they can say, what accounts do you have? Oh, I have a Twitter, I have a Facebook, I have a Rumble, I have a Parler. So they know your accounts, okay? So if you know the accounts, then you might be able to use APIs to go query those data and start linking things together, okay? Your photos and media files, they can read the contents. So they can look to see, maybe GPS coordinates for those photos, different information about those. The microphone, because you might want to do a post and say, I'm at the rally, and you take a picture, so they can record your audio, okay? Storage, they can write to the phone storage, because if you're taking a photo or doing something, they need to be able to store that. And your contacts. So if I have all of your contacts, now I know all your friends. So if I see a Facebook thing and I know who your friends are, then I can do a lookup on those to say, oh, I know all of the people you're associated with. And if I'm going to target them to say, oh, I'm for Biden or I'm for Trump, I know who to target now. I know who's associated with you. So if you make a post or you do something, I can say, oh, go look at this person's post, which is your friend. So we can look at your calendar, so they can see your calendar. They can read even confidential information in your calendar. Okay, don't tell anybody I'm going to the Trump rally. You know, whatever it is, that's the permissions that you're giving them. Okay, receive data from the internet because you might want to have push notifications turned on, broadcast messages, network connection, control the vibration, and run at startup. So when your phone starts, the application starts. So they start collecting. So when you hear candidates on both sides saying, I don't believe in the polls, you don't have to believe in the polls if you're tracking what every user's doing. If you know what the user's doing, you don't have to ask a poll because you know where they're going, you know where they're communicating with, you know what they're doing, and you know all that information. Now on this one, it also turns on the Bluetooth. So with Bluetooth, you could do things called beacons. Does anybody know what a Bluetooth beacon is? Poll question. This is a question in the chat. If you do or you don't, just put it in there. Okay. So if you've ever went to a store and you always wondered, how am I getting ads on this particular thing when I start searching for things? And it might have been because a beacon was picked up by your phone. You don't turn off Bluetooth when you walk into a store. You have it on because it's on for your phone, for your car, and when you walk in, you start beaconing out this information. And your phone starts to interact with these beacons, and they start taking your identification off of that and linking it back to your phone based upon the telephone number for Facebook. Like if you're authenticating to like Facebook, Google, different places, they have your phone identity. So then when you go to these places, if they see the MAC address for something or your Bluetooth identifier, they can tie it back to you. And so now they can target you. They might not make that available to the person that's doing the campaign, but they know who it is. And they can start saying, well, I'm looking for somebody that has my mobile app installed and visited a gun store, or a mobile app and they visited a hospital, or they visited a CVS pharmacy recently. You can start targeting for these things. And these beacons are a little device that interacts with the Bluetooth. And here's a link to one of the stories. So I'm just going to put this in the chat so you can see it. So it goes out there and it works off of your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to be able to track you within these places. And they use this to now go back and send you targeted ads to say, oh, we saw you standing, you know, so many seconds or minutes in this aisle or where this beacon was. Oh, that's in this area of the store. Now I'm going to target you with these types of messages. But now think of it from a political campaign. It could be that there's a beacon at a uniform shop, a school uniform shop, or in a store where they're selling school uniforms, or in a place where there's PPE being sold. So they go, oh, this person's really health conscious. I'm going to send them more things to be aware of. It's COVID related. They're not doing this right, or they're doing this good. You can be targeted now from these types of things that are out there. So it's really important to understand those types of things. And if we look at the privacy statement, okay, the privacy policy, as you go in here, they're telling you that they're going to use this information to collect information about you and your friends, your associates, what you're doing, and be able to link that together to target messaging to you and your groups that you associate with. So this is something that's out there. You can go through and read all of the different things, how they share and disclose to third parties. You're giving up a lot of freedom and anonymity, and you have to be aware of it, okay? Now, when we take a look at the website for Trump, there's some tracking there, but it's not as blatant as what you see in the app. And if we take, well, we're going to go right now and look at the mobile app for Biden, it's a little bit different. But I took the mobile app, okay, that was associated with Trump, and I threw it in hybrid analysis. Hybrid analysis gives you the ability that you can take an APK file and throw it out there and get information. So I'm going to give you this link so you can see it yourself. Okay, so this is the results from looking at hybrid analysis, looking at the official Trump application. And they go, hey, there's one malicious thing. There was a receive boot complete. So this is like one that reboots. It can restart, or you can tell it to run something when it reboots. It's to make sure that the installation stays there, stays in the system that it's actually there. And then if we take a look at these, both tools are using a debug analysis tool. So they have it where like debugging is turned on in the app so they can collect more information. So it's not that one app is better than the other or more privacy protection than the other. With these analysis tools and debuggers, they're seeing a lot of data that they normally wouldn't see unless you have debug turned on. Like you know yourself from being in IT, when you turn debug on a system, you're seeing everything that's happening. You're seeing all those log messages. And here we're seeing they read your contacts, your location, your phone stat, Bluetooth, external storage. So these are the permissions that the app is given to be able to interact with the phone. But this debug piece gives you quite a bit as well. And I would be surprised that you probably get all these things anyway if you're running the debug aspect of this, okay? So this is what you're up against and what you're seeing, okay? Now, when we look inside of RiskIQ, let me go back in, hold on. So this is from our backend system. This is looking at our database, okay? So when we look at this, we see where it is. So here's the Google Play Store, when it was created, what's inside. These are all the URLs that are active when we tested this. So you can see, hey, it's looking at Twitter, it's looking at the real Donald Trump website, more Twitter, yeah, so Twitter and a few other ones, okay? Republican Party, we have the different versions. So every single version that we see, we grab and we take and we analyze and we have that information so we can understand what's happening. When it was first seen, when it was last seen. We know what files that are inside of that APK. So we look at not only the URLs that are being active, but actually individual files. So if we look at your own apps, for example, you might have some pieces of code that someone stole or took. We can show you that, oh, this app has your component inside of it. Someone took it. We'll be able to see that. It just takes a minute to load. And then if it's classified as being malicious or not. But this is the type of thing that you need to be aware of that's out there. And this is the permissions that you're granting when you go and use these apps. So like when you fire up this app, I don't have it on my phone or the Biden one, it will probably ask you, hey, I want to use Bluetooth to find devices and get better location of where you are. Is that okay? You can decide yes or no. And the same is true with the network GPS location. I want to have location services on all the time or just when the app is running. You can decide. I never have things turned on where it's on all the time. I only have it on when I'm using it, if it has to use GPS to be able to help, like, for example, Uber or Lyft. Need my precise GPS because if I'm calling a cab, they need to know where to go to. It helps me find, identify where I am. But I'll only do it when the app is running, okay? So here's a link to all the different things that we see. And then the details on the, you'll see again when we go back to details. My system's frozen up. Okay, here we go. And the permissions: find access location, receive boot complete, access background location. So when it's not running, when the phone, when the app's in the background, it's still grabbing location. Audio settings, get installed refer service, Bluetooth network, calendar, read-write storage, permission. So this is to get cloud to device messages, so like pushing notifications to you, to receive and send those, get your accounts. So this is all the stuff that the Trump app is doing. Okay. So now let's look at the Biden app and see what it's doing. Okay. So give me a second. I'm going to open up those. Okay. So let me give you this one. Okay. So the official Biden app. Okay. So if we take a look and we view the permissions, you're going to see it's different. It's a lot less information that they're gathering on the individual device. Okay. So they're reading your photos and files. So they're finding that same information, the storage. They need to be able to read and write to the storage. They have your Wi-Fi connection information. So if they have their Wi-Fi, they can still get your location, because I can get the IP address and do a lookup on the IP and find out where that IP is located, what city, and potentially, a precise location if there's a good database for it. Your contacts. So I have all your contact information. I'm getting run at startup. So you're not turning this off. You get it on, it's running at startup. Your phone starts, it's started up. Okay. Prevent the device from sleeping. Change your audio settings, install shortcuts, full network assets, and then Google service configuration. They're seeing how, if you have any Google services that you're using, if you're authenticating with Google, they're probably seeing that type of account information as well. So it's similar, but not as straightforward and saying, yeah, I'm tracking everything about you, but they're still tracking, okay? They're still grabbing that information, and they still go and interact with the website. And the website is doing a lot more tracking on the Biden side, okay? So compared to the Trump, because Trump's doing more on the mobile, they're doing more on the website, but they both use the website in their apps, so they're both kind of doing the same. And if we look at the privacy statements, it's very similar, okay? And they want everyone to donate, okay? Every time you click on a page there, they give you the option to donate. They're sharing their information with organizations, same thing that you're doing with inside of the other application. They're very similar. They're linking to third parties, social sharing. They all have access to be able to go and link to your social media. So once you do those links to your social media, they have your social media accounts. Advertising, they're doing cookies. They both have the do not track signals inside their things. They're doing the push notification. So this is the cloud to device type of things. And they both have the ability for California people to get stuff taken out. And then you can contact them. So it's very similar to that, okay? They both link to the real websites. Here's Joe Biden's real website, their policy thing. Now, when we take a look inside of hybrid analysis, if I download that APK file and put it out there, they're showing up as suspicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this in, and here we go. So now it's suspicious. So they're running the debug and analysis tool. So they're seeing all the stuff that's happening on the device because they're in debug. They're running the debug. So because of that, they're going to get a lot more information. So they might even see the same information as the other one because they're now grabbing all that in debug. There was a URL that was identified with one reputation engine saying it's not so good. There was an email that was in the memory. And so it's better, but it's not good, okay? So they're just tracking a different way. And I think this debugger is a way for them to track, to say that they're not tracking, but they're tracking, okay? But it's suspicious because of those things that it's doing, okay? So both of them, no bueno, as the president would say, or come on, man, as Joe would say. I'd be very wary of having this on there because of the correlation with the metadata that you're leaking out that they can do, targeting you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, the places that you're going, things like that, okay? So it's very important to understand what you're giving up by using one of these apps. So inside of the Joe app, we can see all the URLs that are present during this. So they're doing a lot of stuff with GitHub. Here's the official Joe website, Facebook. So they're doing things directing to Facebook. The other one was Twitter. Here's some Twitter. So Facebook and Twitter. Okay, a lot more things that it's linking out to than Trump. So even though that the app didn't have it, if you go out to one of these sites, it might be able to collect data or do things from the site perspective instead of the application perspective. Just bear that in mind. So they're doing the request to install packages. They can install things. They have a foreground service, receive the boot complete, just like the one on Donald Trump, which was a warning that hybrid analysis had. They can read your contacts. They can access your camera roll, activity recognition, broadcast badge, the messages from the cloud, modify your auto, read your contacts, receive and send messages, install shortcuts, update, count. Okay, so these are the things that are out there. Okay, so in my opinion, I wouldn't have either one of these on mine. I would have it on a burner phone that I didn't really care about, that wasn't linked to anything, but I don't want them to have my contacts and all that stuff. That's too much invasion of my personal privacy that I wanted you guys to see. And this cloud to device thing ensures that applications with a request, they get, this is a way for you to update and get those messages directly to you. So this is the way that they have constant communication or telemetry to get things to and from your apps. They're sending this stuff through this cloud to device communication. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So now on to the candidates' mobile sites. Now, one thing I want to say is that both the candidates have websites that are similar, but when we get into subdomains, into host pairs, you might see some offensive domain names. And the candidates aren't buying these. These are people that are against the candidate that buy them and redirect to them. So I want to apologize and tell you now that when we go down this path, you might see something that could offend you. And I'm sorry about that, but this is what's happening in the world right now. And I think both parties need to talk to their the people that are voting them in and say, this is not acceptable. We need to stop this. And it's not good. So just last night, a friend of mine said, hey, there is a website that's trying to shame anybody that gives money to one of the candidates and gives you the ability to give their specific address and how much money they gave and post it to social media and Twitter. It's not good. It's terrible. The information is available because with election laws, they have to know who's giving you what money. But someone took that information, stripped out the other candidate stuff, and made it very easy for you to say that a person is bad because they gave money to a candidate. It's terrible. So let's go through now and let's look at the real websites. So we're going to start off with Donald Trump. Okay, so give me a second. Oh, let me go back and I'm going to review what we talked about. So we looked at these permissions. This is what you get to see. So these are all the permissions that it sees. It's quite a bit. To me, it's way too much. So the privacy, they know where you go, whom you're in contact with, what applications you use, and your identity on other applications. Because of the beaconing, they also know where you shop and where you buy and where you visit. And they can tie that back into campaigns to say, I'm gonna direct message you, target you with messages on platforms that you use to sway you one way or the other. Okay. So turn off your location and your Bluetooth on these devices unless you really need it, and only activate it when you need it, and otherwise they should be off. Okay. Now I also looked at this official app and looked to see if it was on any unofficial app stores. So we looked at Google. So all the other ones that are listed here are unauthorized, okay? It might, Apple is a unofficial one, but all the other ones are unauthorized. So there's 10 on Android APK, 9 on APK follow. So that could mean someone went in and modified it or posted it, gave different permissions, added permissions. I doubt it for the Trump app because it has so many, but you can manipulate it. So whenever you're getting an app, make sure you get it from the official app stores, Google Play, and Apple App Store. The other ones are very suspect and could be bad. So just wanted you to see that. So when we sandboxed it, it wasn't so good, okay? They're both suspicious, okay? So now let's go into, we went into Biden's and we looked at Biden's permission. You can, the photos, the storage, view the Wi-Fi connection, so they get location from Wi-Fi, the contact information, and all the things run at startup, all the things that Trump's was doing, but they have the Google services configuration, so they're tied in more with Google to link you together with Google, things that you connect with Google. So they know your contacts, what applications you use, identity on applications connected to Google services, and reading your storage. So it's very similar, okay? But there's only a few stores that have the Joe Biden app associated with it, okay? And this is what we have on the hybrid analysis. So we're gonna go to the Donald Trump official website, okay? So I'm gonna copy this and paste it into the chat, and we'll begin. Any questions so far that's come in, Ryan or Barrett, that I should be aware of?
Benjamin, we had a question a minute ago about how did you get the APK? Can't get it from the Google Play Store, but sometimes from other stores.
So the way that I got the APK in that particular case was our backend already had the APK. So when I looked at the file versions, remember I showed you, there was a download for me to get all those APKs. So if you're using us to do mobile apps, for example, and you needed the file, we actually have the APKs. So we had a copy of the APK. That's how I got it. So I used the one that we had in our system to do the analysis. That's what I did. Otherwise, you would have to hook up your device and copy the APK out. It would be a lot harder because sometimes they don't allow you to download directly to a device, but we had it. So that's how I did it.
Got it. Thanks, Benjamin.
You're welcome. So now that we understand about the different types of data and what we see, let's go through and take a look at Donald J. Trump website, okay? And you can see here it's hosted through Cloudflare, okay? And you can see all the different places where the sources of this IP address, the passive DNS came from, okay? And we can go back in time and see how things changed over time, okay? You can see for a time it was not routable. This was and then it was routable, okay? So let's look at the WHOIS records, okay? So let's go back in time. Let's go to the very beginning. So we go back in time, the general counsel of Trump organization was responsible for this domain, okay? In New York on 725 Fifth Avenue. So that's probably Trump Tower, okay? So you can see the telephone numbers, how it all is. And as we go through time, you can see that starts to change, okay? And as we get to 2017, still the same. Now it starts to be privacy protected, okay, at GoDaddy. 2017, 2019, same thing to present, okay? So now it's DTTM Organization LLC instead of the Trump Organization. So this is probably something associated with their campaign, okay? And it's all on Cloudflare, okay? Now the certificates, if you notice, they only have 2 IP addresses, okay? Only one certificate, okay? And it's a paid certificate, okay? So very straightforward, very clean, not much things here. So now we're gonna look at the subdomains. And when we look at these subdomains, we're gonna pay attention to the redirects, okay? Because it's really important to, the subdomains, we're gonna look at the subdomains, and then we're gonna look at the redirects and the host pairs. So when we look at these subdomains, we can kind of tell who Trump is targeting his message to, just by looking at these. So we can see Albanians, Donald Trump, Asians, Donald Trump, Black voices, Catholics, Chaldeans, Democrats, e-control, and there's 78. So I'm going to change this to be 100 so we can see the entire list. Greek voices, gun owners, Hindu voices, Jewish voices, Italians, Irish Americans, Indian voices, military families, moms, Muslim voices, Native Americans, Polish Americans, Pride, sheriffs, Sikhs, Ukrainian Americans, pro-life voices, veterans. So you can see who they're targeting. And if we go to some of these, if we open them up in a real browser, and the reason why I did this is I know it's a good domain, and I know those subdomains were good. They're all linking back to the same domain, but there's a page associated directly with those things. And when we go and look at these, like the Pride one, you can actually see who their advisory board is, and you can sign up. So they're showing you who they're targeting and who's helping them with their message for those particular groups. Okay, so it's kind of straightforward, not like their app where they're gathering all this data. The website is more straightforward. Black Life Voices, and they have Herman Cain, who was the chairman, who passed away of COVID, and now we have others listed there, okay? And all the events that are happening. So this is what they're doing to get their message out to these groups, okay? So when we go back and we take a look inside of here, we have the who is data. So we see now that the whose control of the domain is actually changed from the Trump organization. The next big thing is to look at, we had one certificate and the host pairs. So this is the piece that, please don't get offended. And these are not generally the candidate creating these things. It's somebody who's upset with the candidate, who buys a domain name to make something seem bad and associates it with a candidate. And you're going to see it on both sides. And this needs to stop, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it where the cause is a redirect, okay? And then I'm going to go through and list out, there's 300 here, and we're going to look at these. And every one of these domains is redirecting to the real website, okay? So if we go down here, keep America great, vote Trump, okay? Okay, that could be probably from him or a supporter. Fly for Trump. So remember when the fly landed on Pence? So there's a fly for Trump and there's a fly for Biden. Somebody bought both domains. I thought that was really funny. And I spent about an hour yesterday because there was a Reddit thread saying that the fly was CGI and somebody bought the domains before the debate, but somebody went through and figured out that it was actually a couple hours after the debate somebody bought those domains. I thought that was really funny. I thought that would be a good investigation for us, but it ended up to be not true. Trump's worst enemy, and then Black Lives Matter, Hartford, and then you'll start seeing some really nasty, like racism for Trump. Let's see. So if you go through these, you'll start seeing some offensive ones. Russians for Trump. So you can see how people are trying to make people think Trump's one way or another by buying a domain name and linking it back to him. And the same is true for Biden that we'll see. Let me see. Thought it was funny that Jeb's Bush domain now links to Trump. Yeah, so there's some nasty ones in here. So I'm gonna show my screen for a second. Okay. So when we look at the the things that Trump is, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Who he's targeting with his campaign. Because he's using the subdomains, it's really easy to see. These are all the different things. I went in there and I pulled them out and made a concise list so you can see who he's talking to, who his message is intended for, because he has a specific page for each one of these groups. Okay, and now the bad ones come up. You'll see some good things and some bad. Trump grabbing, snowflake victory, dictator Republican. You know, you can see some bad stuff in this list. So these are people buying that are pro and against Trump, buying domain names and then linking them to the candidates. So it's not great. So just bear that in mind. So what we're going to do now is let's take a look at the Joe Biden campaign, and we'll look at some of the trackers and things that they're doing. So let me send you this link now.
Hey, Benjamin, not sure if this is a good time. We actually had another question come in about using RiskIQ at Maltego. The question is, you mentioned the ability to query HA via API from within RiskIQ. Wondering if that can be tied into a one-shot via transform, or can I only call the HA API from the web GUI?
So inside of, so when we're done, if we have a few minutes, I actually did a transform of the Donald Trump thing, and I can show it. So basically, you take your API key, you go into Maltego, and you install it for passive total, and you add your API key and secret in there. And then when you can use all the transforms associated with it to go in there and use it. And it, I think we gave you like 1,000 API calls a day. So you'll be able to run as many transforms you need for the 7 days and figure out what's happening. So every time you run a transform, it pulls back a bunch of data, and you'll see that with every beep that you hear, it's an API call. So like every thing that happens, you'll hear it beep, and that's like to me, it's like how often the API is used every beep you hear. But you can use under your profile, you'll see under your user information, there's user and org. You can take the key and throw it into Maltego and use it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me just copy this. It's a little bit slow. So here we go. Okay. So here's the real Joe Biden one. Okay. So I'm going to open that one up now. Okay. My machine is running really slow. Here we go. Probably both candidates are attacking me. Let's see. Oh, that's the mobile app one. Let me open up. I opened up the wrong one. Give me a second. My little laptop needs all the help it can get today. Okay, here we go. Okay, and there was something really funny that I'm going to point out, and you'll see when we get to the Who's records. When I saw it, I went, "Oh!" This made me laugh because it made me think of my father. My father is in his 80s, so we'll see in a second. So with all the people hitting everything, it's taking a minute to show up. Let's see. Come on. I'm gonna kill it. Go back in. Okay, give me a second. Just thinking. Okay, I have Safari working. And Chrome. Okay. Okay. Okay, here we go. Sorry about this. It's what happens when you do things live. Ryan, are you having any issues with the site, or is it just me?
I'm able to use it. I'm using it right now, actually, so I'm not sure necessarily what's going on.
Okay. Let me see if I can bring up Safari. My machine is just running dog slow right now.
I was actually going to say, I wasn't sure if it was on my side or your side, but you actually went through like a 30-second period where you were pretty choppy. So I'm not sure if it could be your connection, but hopefully it is resolved soon.
Can you guys hear me?
We heard you for a second, Benjamin, then it kind of cut out.
Okay. Okay, let me check my network settings. I think it's a network issue.
Yeah, someone actually also just commented a potential cause as well, maybe a low battery as well, which I know sometimes my Mac acts up when it's below 5%.
And I'm plugged into power. Let me see. There it goes. Okay. Is that any better? No?
Yep. Quality's a lot better.
Okay. All right. So didn't know it was running off battery. It was plugged in. Okay. Here's Safari. Let me go to Chrome. Okay. I think that was it. I think it was the battery. Okay. Hopefully. Come on. They don't want me to talk about Biden. Hey, can you hear me okay? Is it? It looks like the video's a little.
Can hear you better now.
Okay. I might need somebody to bring it up, and I'll tell you what to click on. Because it is not.
Bring it up here.
Okay, so I will make you presenter. So bring it up on your screen and let me know when you're ready, and I will make you presenter. Okay, give me 1 second. Attendees.
Yep, just need to clear some tabs as well on my end.
Okay. Okay, Ryan.
All right.
Wait, so go ahead and yeah, we can see your screen.
All right. And where do you want me to navigate to? Desmond, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Just making sure. Where do you want me to navigate to here?
Just go to the resolutions tab. Go to, it's in the chat. If you look at the chat, I posted it.
Thank you. Actually. Sorry, just navigating to the chat here. Not overly familiar with this platform. There we go.
It's going to be joebiden.com.
Yeah, got it.
joebiden.com. Just type that in.
Oh, sorry, I had my screen paused there. I think we're good to go.
Okay, so now if we take a look at this, we can see the IP addresses. They're all in the US. They're all routable. Go back up to the top so you can see I want to see the heat map. So we can see how long it's been around for. It's been through September 9th of 2009. There's been a Joe Biden website. Go look at the WHOIS record and go to the very bottom record on the left-hand side. Okay, so the very first record. Okay, so look at the first record. Look at the email address that's associated with it. There's Gmail, AOL. So Biden 2020 at AOL.com. So it used to be at AOL. So that tells you how far back this was. It reminded me of my father having an AOL account. So this has been around for a long period of time. Okay, and if you go to the current record, you'll see that, hey, it will be privacy protected. You go to the very top one. Okay, and this is now privacy protected because of GDPR and other things. Okay, take a look at the subdomains. Okay, if you notice here, all of these subdomains are just like for application type of working, like there's testing, there's mail, there's different things. So it's not targeting users at all. Okay, it's just for functionality purposes. If you go take a look at the certificates and expand out some of those certificates, you're going to see something very unusual.
Hey, Benjamin, you're chopping up again.
Hey, Benjamin, you're chopping. Okay, let me see if I can dial in. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, I'm dialing in from my phone.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sorry about this, Barrett. First time this happened. So expand out some of the SHA-1 certificates. So you can see here, Let's Encrypt. So they're buying some Let's Encrypt. So this is a free certificate authority, which is kind of unusual and it's usually found in suspicious or malicious websites, but it doesn't mean it is. It could be that they're just using those to stand up infrastructure quickly and not pay any money for it, for some of these certificates. So joebiden.com has a Let's Encrypt certificate associated with it, okay? But if you scroll down, you'll see some paid certificates as well. So one from Amazon and others. So this was something suspicious that I didn't have a lot of time to go through and look at, but the ones I looked at were all legitimate. If you go back up to the top, and let's take a look at the host pairs, and then filter to show redirects by cause. Okay, if we take a look at these, you'll see Cunanan for Trump, Joe Biden, fly for Biden. So you'll see a lot of these things that are listed here that are pro and against the candidate. And there's a lot more that are listed than Donald Trump had. And it's the reason is that Biden is using a lot of these, like how Trump used the subdomains. He's creating completely different domains and then linking back to his site. So some of he's using a lot more legitimate ones to promote his organization, his website, than Trump just using the subdomains. Okay, and if you go look at the trackers, go look at some of the trackers, and you'll see that there's a lot more trackers associated with this. If we take a look, you'll start seeing some LinkedIn trackers, Facebook pixel ID, so they can put a pixel on something and track who you are, where you're going, and associate it with your Facebook account. And Facebook will have a super cookie that takes all of the cookies that are in your machine and stores them, so they know everywhere that you went using that Facebook tracking pixel. Okay, so by using that alone, they can already find out every place that you've gone. So it's a little way of circumventing what happens on their mobile app by going there, and if you getting that tracking pixel, they know your Facebook ID, and from your Facebook ID, they're going to get all of the cookies associated in your machine and put them inside there, and so then they can track you from any other website that you went to. So it's kind of a little bit different, but they're using Facebook to do a lot of their link analysis of where you're going, who you are, what you're doing. It's from the application perspective from their website. They're doing that. Okay, so they're both are tracking, but they're doing it different ways. Trump's doing more of it from the app side, and Biden's doing it more from the website side. But both are tracking you the same amount, from my opinion, but they're doing it different ways. So be very careful. Guard your privacy. Without your privacy, you don't really have freedom. So don't give it up easily. But that's what I wanted to highlight and show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back, Barrett, and go back to my slide deck and see. Let me see. Show my screen. So do you see my screen now, Barrett?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Okay. So I think we had just a momentary lapse in here. But if we take a look at the websites that are for and against Joe Biden, you'll see Antifa links to Trump. Don Trump Jr. links to Biden. Antifa links to Biden. Trump has gout. Tracing Trump. Senior citizens for Trump all go to Joe Biden. Okay, and we have 2 pages of these. Okay, so it's both candidates are doing, or they can't control this because somebody can go buy a domain and do it, but they should not ask for this to happen. So Barrett, would you like to do the last couple poll questions?
Sure. We have just one more queued up here and launching it now.
Okay. The question is, did anything you saw today change your mind on who you're voting for? And it shouldn't have, but it might have. So the result is no, good, shouldn't at all. What these candidates are doing are pretty much the same, but they're going from different ways to get to the results. So I hope you like this. So this investigation was looking at something that we knew was good, but to understand how it works, how it functions. You have to do that sometimes in your investigations. I wish we had a little bit more time to go through the components and what they're using and things like that. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of what's happening and what they're doing to understand the voter and how they should target the voters. Trump's doing more from the mobile side and what they're doing. Biden's doing more from the website side, but both are doing the same sort of thing. And I wish both candidates the best. And please get out and vote if you haven't done so already. Barrett, if there's any questions, they can email us at success@RiskIQ. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, just thank you, Benjamin, for a great workshop today, and thank you everyone for attending. Like Benjamin said, you can always email us at success@riskiq.net with any additional questions, and we'll be following up with everyone shortly. And just again, thank you, Ryan, thank you, Jacqueline, thank you, Benjamin, and thank you all for attending. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.